Is Christmas a Christian holiday? Well, the Christians would like to pretend that it is, but they're wrong. It's all a lie. It's all been fabricated and stolen as a conversion tactic. The religious don't like that, and they sure won't tell you the truth, but it's not that hard to find out what really happened all those many years ago. So it's time for some truth. It's time that the reality be told. Merry Christmas, one and all. Here's my gift to you. Enjoy. Since, just by chance, our regular release day falls on Christmas Eve this year, I thought I'd do a little holiday-themed video. The religious like to pretend that Christmas is their holiday, but they're wrong. It isn't now, nor has it ever been about Jesus. The religious stole everything, and now they can't be honest about it, because honesty has never been their cup of tea. Believe what we believe, or we're going to kill you. That's been traditional Christianity all along. But today, we can set the record straight, and that's what I aim to do. Christmas is not now, nor has it ever been a Christian holiday. They have just lied to you. And here's the truth. Like just about every major religious modern holiday, from Halloween to Easter, Christmas has its roots in European pagan culture. Christianity, as is no surprise, came along and co-opted existing celebrations and grafted Christian traditions onto the holiday because, who the hell needs pagan holidays anyhow? In a lot of ways, it was an attempt to ingratiate themselves into the native populations. It took well-known and beloved celebrations and, as the early Christians tried to force their religion on everyone else, they added a Christian flavor to pagan celebrations and ceremonies and pretended like it was theirs all along, even though it very clearly wasn't. This is nothing new. Other religions have done the exact same thing here and there, but Christianity has stolen more non-Christian holidays and tried to make it their own than pretty much anyone else ever. So let's look at some of the things that they've lifted when it comes to Christmas. Christmas originally came from the Roman celebration of Saturnalia, during which revelers celebrated the god of agriculture, Saturn, on the winter solstice. It isn't the birthday of Jesus, it's the birthday of the unconquered sun. Early Christianity, desperate to portray their imaginary Christ as a real human being, decided that if Jesus was going to be real, he needed a birthday. The stories in the Bible clearly depicted Jesus being born sometime in late summer or early fall, because, it snows in Palestine, and there's no way that shepherds would be out tending their flocks in December. Secondly, according to the Bible, Mary and Joseph came to Bethlehem for the census, but censuses of the day were never held in the winter because of the freezing temperatures. Never mind the fact that there was no census when Jesus was supposedly born, it simply wasn't done historically. Therefore, we know that Jesus wasn't really born in December, if he ever existed at all. Instead, early Christians simply arbitrarily grabbed the celebration of Saturnalia and shoved Jesus in there for no good reason whatsoever. It didn't appear until 336 CE, when the idea of a nativity feast was found on an old Roman calendar. Nobody had even thought of Jesus being born in December for centuries after his supposed life. That's further evidence that the actual birth date of Jesus, if there ever was one, was lost long before anyone arbitrarily stapled that onto Saturnalia. But let's talk about Saturnalia for a moment. It was a week of revelry that took place between December 17th and December 24th, during which all Roman social codes were reversed. Lucian wrote a poem called Saturnalia, which described it in part, coming from the perspective of a god. During my week, the serious is barred, no business allowed, drinking and being drunk, noise and games of dice, appointing of kings and feasting of slaves, singing naked, clapping, and occasional dunking of corked faces in icy water. Such are the functions over which I preside. It started out as a celebration by rural farmers of the end of the shortening days and the distant coming of spring. Without artificial light, the increasing darkness scared early man, and the celebration that would become Saturnalia marked a turning point in the year where things were going to start getting better. Of course, it wasn't just Saturnalia that the Christians stole from. The ancient Celts celebrated Yule, where they acknowledged that the days were slowly getting longer, thus the coming of spring was upon them. Of course, pretty early on in their history, Christians who had tried to stamp out pagan traditions realized that it just wasn't working. Pagans weren't willing to give up their celebrations and beliefs, and so Christianity did what it's done ever since. It just adopted these celebrations and beliefs and influential figures, threw a thin veneer of Christianity over them, and pretended that they'd been there all along. The Catholics were infamous for this. If you take a look at some of the earliest Catholic saints, many were taken either directly from pagan gods or from other pagan ideas. Saint Demetrios came from the goddess Demeter, and whose traditional festival fell in late October. Saint Demetrios had a feast day on October 26th. Convenient how that happened, huh? Aphrodite became Saint Aphroditus. The Roman god Mars became Saint Martin, which was referred to as Saint Martin in the Fields. The group of Roman gods known as Lares became Saint Lawrence, or as it's called in the early church, Saint Lawrence beyond the wall. The Lares were Roman field gods that oversaw the grain fields. In Italy, it became Saint Lorenzo beyond the wall, meaning it was what was outside of the walls of the city. You know, the fields. Even today, there is still a church dedicated to Saint Lorenzo in Rome. The Roman god Quirinus became Saint Cyrinus. Venus turned into Saint Venera, and it wasn't just Roman gods that got that treatment. The Zoroastrian god Ahura Mazda became Christianized as Saint Ador Ormazd in the early Syriac Christian church. These are not real people, nor do most things in Christianity reflect real events. It's all just made up for politically expedient purposes. But let's get back to Saturnalia. We can look at other similarities between Christmas and Saturnalia that have remained as part of our collective consciousness, such as the gluttony that marks both holidays. The ancient Romans were celebrating a bountiful harvest with a feast of winter vegetables and roast fowl. Christians, since they were trying to appeal to newly Christianized Romans, they just kept the tradition going. Feasting on Christmas is now part of the holiday. It has nothing at all to do with Christianity. Likewise, because the Romans were well known for their fertility rites, it's not too surprising that the ceremony of hanging mistletoe sprang from it. Getting it on under a sprig of greenery was common to both, although it really got going later on when Christianity got going in Germany. The Romans were a lot more enthusiastic in their celebrations, but the core of the legend is still there. Celtic Druids were convinced that mistletoe would protect them against thunder and lightning, and they distributed cuttings from the tree to its citizens. It was believed that if you hung mistletoe, it would form a safe zone for enemies to come together, put down their weapons, and call a temporary truce. Now, people snog under it. Ivy, another traditional Christmas plant, often used for making wreaths and garlands, came from Bacchus, the Roman version of Dionysus. It was the symbol of eternal life, which is yet one more thing that the Christians stole. And while singing isn't specific to Christmas, the art of caroling came from those early pagans once again, who had the tradition of traveling their fields, singing to scare away evil spirits. They would go to the homes of neighbors and sing to wish them long life and good health. It was never really specific to Saturnalia, but it has become connected to Christmas. And what about gift giving? We go back to those early Romans who, on Saturnalia, gave their children wax figures that represented the sacrifices made to Saturn in exchange for a bountiful harvest in the coming year. It wasn't traditional for centuries for Christians to give gifts on Christmas, but by the 1700s, French nuns had taken up giving gifts to the poor on Christmas Eve, and it's been a tradition ever since. The standard Christmas colors of red and green return us to ancient fertility rites, and the burning of Yule logs, that's still practiced to this day. It was a symbol of the returning sun and the lengthening of days. Now, I could go on and on and on talking about trees and wreaths and all of that, but I think I've already made my point. Christmas has nothing at all to do with Jesus. It's a stolen holiday. Jesus wasn't born on December 25th, if he was ever born at all. This is early Christians trying to force pagans into their religion by tapping their holidays and their beliefs and Christianizing them. That's not what happens if these Christian beliefs are actually true. But they're not. This is a political and social ploy. It's not reality. Only a fool would think that it was. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't celebrate Christmas because it isn't really religious at its core, at least not in the modern world. Nothing in the modern celebration known as Christmas has anything at all to do with Christianity. Frosty the Snowman, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and Santa Claus. None of those things have anything at all to do with religion. The idea for Santa Claus might have loosely come from the story of St. Nicholas, which a lot of that was stolen from pagans as well, but what we might imagine Santa Claus to look like today, that came from a Coca-Cola ad campaign in 1931. Artist Fred Mizzen drew the first version of Santa as a red-suited jolly fat man, and it just stuck. Prior to that, Santa Claus was depicted as a stern, often elf-like thin man, dating all the way back to Thomas Nast, who published an image in Harper's Weekly in 1862. Back then, Santa Claus was political, and he supported the Union. Everything that we think about Christmas these days is purely secular. Some people, they might go to church, but for most people, it's all colorful lights and giving presents to family and friends. Go to any major retailer, and you won't see much in the way of religious iconography. You might find a nativity scene stuffed on the bottom shelf, gathering dust, but mostly it's all secular in nature. Christmas has nothing at all to do with Jesus. It never did. It never will. Feel free to celebrate it if you'd really like to. Or don't. It's completely up to you. But the religious have no place claiming that there's an annual war on Christmas or that Jesus is the reason for the season or anything stupid like that. If anything, the religious celebration of Christmas has been on the decline for decades. Nobody cares. It's something that you stick on your Christmas cards, and even those don't sell well in comparison to purely secular designs. I went looking through various top 10 Christmas card lists, and not one of them, not one was religious. Nobody cares. But in the end, it's really up to you. Whatever you decide to do, that's your decision. I hope that you do spend the holiday season with family and friends and stay warm because, it's cold out there. After all, it's what the pagans would have wanted those thousands and thousands of years ago. Take some time and enjoy yourself. You deserve it because tomorrow's another day and we all know what that's like. So from everyone here at Bitchspot to everyone out there, have a very Merry Christmas, and to all, a very good night.
Boom, dicky, 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 dickin bum 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 dickin bum